guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we have a really exciting video for you because we are dyeing yarn. We are going to be dyeing our Zara Raw White yarn base, which is an extra fine superwash merino, and we are going to be using the Dharma acid dyes. So for this technique, we are going to be using an overdying method. So we're going to dye the yarn twice. Firstly, we're going to saturate the yarn with pigment, and then we are going to glaze it over with a dark navy. So the first thing that I have done is I have added 250 milliliters of water to each of my cups, and we are going to make a diluted solution from the Dharma acid pigment dyes. So in order to do that, I am just going to take 1/4 of a teaspoon, so I have 1/8 of a teaspoon here. I'm going to plop 2 of these into my cup, and then I'm going to mix it around. So for my specific dyes, this is going to be about a 1% stock solution because it's about 1/4 of a gram of dry dye. So you want to make sure you mix it really well. It also really helps if you have jarred containers, so you can doubly mix it by shaking it up. But this is just what we're working with today. So this is the dark navy by Dharma, and I'm going to quickly just rinse off my little teaspoon measuring thing, and I will do the bright aqua. It's really important that you wash off your tools before you dip into the second color, just because you don't want to cross-contaminate those, because if I didn't, we would have some of the dark navy in the bright aqua. So this is what you guys should get once you've mixed your stock solutions, and now you're ready to dye the yarn. Okay, so in my dedicated dye pot here, I have 10 cups of water mixed with 3 tablespoons of citric acid. For this part, you can use white vinegar if you like, but I just prefer the smell of the citric acid, so that is what I am using here. And then I didn't pre-soak my yarn because I kind of want the colors to become a little variegated in this tutorial. But I did pre-wet the yarn. So I just ran it under some water and I squeezed out most of the water that it did have in it, but it did not have any acid in it. It wasn't a pre-soak like that. My water is just under a boil, so that is what we were aiming for here. And I'm going to plop in my raw white Zara. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take about 1/3 to about half of my bright aqua dye solution and add it into the pot. So I did end up using about half of it. So you can just go ahead and mix that around and set a timer for about 10 minutes and come back and check if the water has cleared of dye. If you want it to be a darker color, you can add more of your solution, or if you want it to be a super light watercolory yarn, you can just add a little bit less. And as long as you mix it around, the yarn should all be blue by the end. Another really great tip for kettle dyeing is if you want the yarns to be a little bit more variegated, what you can do is you can add the acid in after you've added the yarn and the dye. And that will give you a little bit more even coverage, but because we added the acid in first, some colors that we poured the dye directly on are going to strike a little quicker. So you can see there are some bits that are a little bit dark and a little bit light, but that's what we were looking for today. So again, set a timer for 10 minutes and then just come back and check on your yarn. Okay guys, so we are back. It has been 10 minutes, and now if you take a look, you can see our dye bath has fully cleared. There is no leftover color in the pot, so we are good to actually take out this yarn and plop it in a bowl and set aside for now. Make sure you let some of that water drain off because it is very hot. So as you can see right now, this yarn is definitely variegated. You can see some darker tones in there and some lighter tones. And that's exactly what we were looking for. So now I'm just going to rinse this off with some cool water so it's a little bit easier to work with, and I will be right back. Okay, so now we are ready to start doing our second dye. So for this one, I'm actually going to add a little bit more citric acid in the pot because I want this to strike really quickly. When you're glazing, the second color that you do, or third, whatever it is, you're only going to be dipping it in the pot for just a few seconds and then taking it out. So if you want good coverage and color fastness, you can add in a little bit more acid. I'd say I probably added in about maybe a tablespoon and a half, 2 tablespoons there. So I'm just gonna mix it up. And then so for the difference for the second dye that we're going to do here is I'm going to add in the dark navy first. So I'm going to add in another half of our dye stock. So if you are only going to dye one skein, one 100 gram skein, you could have made about half of the dye stock that we did. I like to have a little extra rather than not have enough to finish out the yarn. Or if you were dyeing 2 skeins, this would be about the perfect amount. So again, I squeezed out most of the water that was in my yarn just so I can now touch it, and we are going to add it into the pot. So I'm going to fully submerge the yarn, dip it in there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. We are going to take it out now. And this is what you should see. So you can see some really beautiful variegations in here. You can still see that bright aqua popping through, but the yarn is definitely darker and more muted. So I really like this technique because you can take a really bright yarn and make it a little bit more muted and wearable for some people, or you can just play around and experiment with some really beautiful colors. Let's say I wanted to do yellow and blue in this. You could do yellow first and then blue afterwards, and it won't necessarily make green. You might have some little flecks of green in there, but if you mix the 2 yarns in the same pot, there would definitely be some green. So that's the major benefit of overdying or doing this glazing method. You can kind of get one that's really saturated and the second that is just a light, shallow color penetration. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this to the sink and wash it off, and I'll show you guys what that looks like as well. Okay, so we are over at the sink, and I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like when you wash this yarn. I do expect a fair amount of color bleeding because we didn't really give the navy a lot of time to sit in the pot, and that's why, if you noticed, we had a lot of navy dye still left over in the pot. So I do expect some color bleeding off of this, although not a huge amount. So I'm just gonna turn on my water here and rinse it off. Be careful because this water, or this yarn, is still hot. Remember, it was just in a nearly boiling pot. So yeah, you can already see some navy coming off there. But again, we're gonna really rinse it and make sure that it's not bleeding by the time we're finished. So next I'm just going to add a little bit of dish soap into my pot here so we can make sure we get all of that extra dye out. Sometimes when you add in the dish soap, it will start to bleed even more, but it's the best way to get all of that extra color that didn't absorb out of the yarn. So now I'm just going to wash out all of the dish soap and make sure my water is running clean before I hang it up to dry. And then I will be back with the dry skein to show you guys what it looks like. Okay guys, so we are back and the yarn is dry, and this is the final look. I am really excited about how this yarn turned out. I love how you can see so many different color variegations and different bits of bright aqua. You can see really light blue. You can see bits of navy in there. Overall, this is a really fun and simple way to dye yarn. If you guys are interested in checking out the Zara Raw White Base, I will leave a link down below. If you buy 2 bags of this yarn, you can get free international shipping. And yeah, make sure you leave a like and comment down below and subscribe to our channel for more content. See you next time.